you, buddy?
Good, man, good.
Y'all staying busy?
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah.
We're rolling. If we could get things to finish the houses, we'd be in great shape.
Yeah.
But such is life.
Have you experienced this any time before?
I've built twice as many houses that went smooth as silk that I'm building right now, and just struggling to finish every one. Sometimes without appliances, sometimes without shower doors, sometimes, who knows what's next.
Yeah.
Can't get I got 4 open holes right now, can't get concrete in them. I've probably got 10 slabs waiting. Can't get concrete.
What are your customers saying? They understand? Are they riding you?
Well, a little of both.
Yeah.
I think a little of both. After a while, they grow weary of hearing it, but there's nothing I
Yeah.
can't share anything with them but the truth.
Yep.
You know, and the interesting part is, you get a box shipped in, like with a light fixture, and the electrician will hang it, and it won't be the color that it's on the box.
Oh.
You'll get ceramic tile in, and the tile setters are a little bit brainless, but they'll lay it, and then the color on the box is wrong, or the color on the stone box is wrong. You know, it's like, there's no intelligence in the industry anymore,
Yeah.
and there are no tradespeople. I mean, all of us look like this,
Uh-huh.
the ones that know what they're doing,
Uh-huh.
look like.
That's awesome.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm doing okay.
Well, he handed me 2 more today. I'm still trying to make sense of this one.
What are you up to these days?
I'm still working 3 days a week at Skyline Cap
Overlay
up
on
the street.
how they-
Okay.
I remember
Environmental.
Lisa
the
to
state
join it.
And something.
Was she
water
in,
monitoring.
was she in your
Mentioned
class?
this, but he felt-
A couple of years behind me in school. Anyhow, you know, when I was living in Virginia Beach,
Hey, Mr. Work,
I wanted to
Yeah,
come
I know,
home.
and he's not sure where
see
he's
you.
going
It's
with
nice to
this.
see you
And
too.
We had this in
she
our
died
house
of
well.
too.
cancer.
Oh, no.
So this job
I just
opened
thought
up,
if
so,
they
you know,
paid
we got
me
the Head
part of
Start
the
program.
social
Interested in your passion
I'm the
speech the
finance
other night.
director. I'm just 3 days a week there, and then this
might
is
get a
every
call.
day.
Oh, I bet.
Well,
There's
this
no
is
end.
You guys live in that
third meeting I've had.
yellow,
County
very
related.
attractive yellow
So
house
do you,
up there.
this Skyline, we
Gorgeous
talked about this the
front.
other day, and I
Do we?
didn't know,
No,
Skyline
sir.
Cap
We're
owns
on
the
Orange
I'm
Road.
trying to.
base
Susie Seal's
building
house.
next
We
door.
just bought it,
That was a question.
and Barbara's.
And I knew about Barbara's house.
So,
That was
see,
because
her
it's
entire
back.
board area-
Now, what about those apartments you all used to own?
But if you go
You
down
all
Orange
used to own
Road,
some apartments,
29, you look left.
Right.
no, somewhere.
13
I think
apartments
we're the
in
fourth driveway.
So-
You never notice how.
green, and we got
Way
4
back
on
on the road.
Duplex Lane.
So,
Yes.
because
Down
your
there.
eye catches the house that are all
Yeah,
about
we
the
have
same
those
depth.
4, and then we have 6 on Barbara's.
I was,
You're gonna be able to get six.
One's gonna be an efficiency.
Jennifer, I Peter work.
There's 5 in there already, we got space, and then 6 going right now.
Great, thank you. Great.
Here.
I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing some more hits.
Yeah, I have my duplexes for those.
Yeah. Yeah, still got those.
Quite a lot to manage.
Try to provide
Looking
some
forward to seeing you
affordable
guys next week.
housing.
Boy, do we
Most
need
of them
it.
voucher clients.
Section 8.
Yeah.
Section 8.
Oh, boy, would they
I saw
need it.
Dave earlier this week. He got me all set.
We
If
were
you wanted to come
providing
meet
it too.
before you took.
I can't work unless I got.
Yeah.
But not official.
Right.
What we were what we were charging.
Somebody's been sitting in my seat.
Wherever you wanna sit, it doesn't, either way.
So the rate
How you doing?
memory, we burned it.
Good.
Yeah.
No, we didn't, but.
Mike has his sub.
Hey, Mike.
Hey,
I'm just trying to turn some of these on, so
Mike,
it's
come on up
recording.
here,
so-
Mike. I mean, we get as many people as we can facing each other.
Well, Peter,
hi
hey,
there.
they got a
Mr.
spot.
Snyder?
Yes, hi.
That's who took it.
Hey, Jennifer.
Yeah.
I saw you with your, when you came over here and spoke to us that one night.
Right,
Oh,
right.
yeah,
There
I
were
mean,
so
most
many
people
of you,
don't
I'm
get
sorry.
Yeah, 9,
used to work from back front.
So it's-
to be exact.
Yeah, well, it's good to find
Yeah,
out.
going
Yeah.
Is
Good.
there a way
Good.
determine?
Well, we'll see how this goes, huh?
Absolutely. Now, I work at.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
This looks normal.
Oh, I'm used to formal here anyway.
Okay, so casual.
Sure, absolutely. Hey, I'm dressed casual.
There you go.
Carolina Blues.
Carolyn, oh, is that a, I'm sorry,
I
is
got
that a
back.
school or do I?
So
UNC?
both my folks passed away 2012 and 13.
You look tired, Clay.
State? Oh, really? Oh, no. Well, just the opposite of UVA here.
Yeah, but the company I was.
Down in North
working for,
Carolina.
Virginia
North
Beach,
Carolina,
they
UNC.
have all venture capitalists.
Yeah, you haven't been here long.
And they came in and said, oh, nothing's gonna change.
Okay. Okay.
We got,
You know, I wanna go home anyway,
happens
and that was a
next
perfect
year.
interview.
Are you in this county?
I'm actually out Fredericksburg.
Oh, okay. Wow, you made a trip there.
I mean, I live right across the street. from
Hopefully
Trying
that.
to see what would be the central point, because my
Virginia
office
Beach,
is in
79th
Fredericksburg,
Street.
but my husband is working in DC.
Uh-huh. Okay.
How can I help you?
Beach,
Place to access
sailing,
a
playing
vacation
volleyball.
was fun.
Hi, Peter Wright.
Started seeing my dermatologist on the beach.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
And he's been here for 4 years as well?
Chairs are
Well, actually, I
slightly
saved
more
when you're
comfortable.
Uh-huh.
Fair enough.
You followed him.
On me,
It was like,
Well, that's probably a good thing. Well, I mean, you could have stayed behind, right?
that's the side of the country.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I know of some people doing that right now. It's like, yeah, he's here, and it's my attorney's daughter, and she's in Chicago. And they've only been married for 8 years, and y'all were doing this? He didn't want to leave his job here, and she wanted to take that job up there, so Chicago, Madison County, they're different.
Rochester, same day.
That's a, yeah, I don't know how long I'm gonna do that.
In Rochester, they couldn't decide which one to hire, so they hired us both and put him in Clark County, me in Gilmore County. And so we became, so I was like,
That Mr. You
November
got it all,
77,
all
so I'm
organized and everything.
I started my company,
Hey, Peter. Mike, how are you? Good, sir.
No, I've told people.
We're making a circle. Well, we can sit up here and spread out, but we make a circle.
Well,
See, I was
I
never-
can't get out up out of these chairs
Well, there's
without
not enough writing room
assistance.
for me down there.
Yeah, yeah.
Bad
I'm
as
gonna
these
write, I
chairs
can't
are.
do it.
He was riding on his customized van.
Jennifer, do you work in Culpeper?
Your mic is on. My mic.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's pretty good. Hey, you know, Ford's gonna spend most of his time down in Florida.
Because the company we started, he's still owns it. Because I took the whole of this company, we took Frank. We divided it.
But y'all were together
26 years. Perfect partnership.
How's Travis? Jennifer, have you seen this?
How's Travis?
Royce, how are you?
Oh, what is this?
Good.
I know. I got all, we've done this before. I've got all these rules. I can't. We're glad to see you.
Thanks for your comments.
Okay, neat. Is that, something that you can share with us?
Good.
Oh, yeah.
You remember me?
Sorry?
Is this something you
remember
can
me?
share with us? 'Cause
I'm happy to, let you all copy it.
I came over to the Boys and Girls Club over to the farm. Over at Acorn Hill. I married Robin. Yep.
Now he knows you. Now he knows you.
Hey, Peter, how are you? Yeah, we're almost neighbors. We're almost neighbors.
Yes, we are.
Just, you know, through the woods, through the fields. Started to come out there and do some work for Carl. You had something done a couple months ago, if I remember right? Didn't you have some, you had some work done through Carlisle a couple months ago? I forgot what it was. And we were up there on top of the hill now, we're doing a lot of work. Jason, we're putting a bunch of solar panels up there.
Hi, how are you tonight? You gonna keep us straight?
Yes, I go there every day.
As a resource.
Yeah, okay.
Talking about these. I may have sent you a copy too, but I remember when I
Right up.
brought
So
it
the
up,
panels just got installed this year, this week.
said the county did a
And we just ran the electricity to
survey, I
the, you
think,
know, all the wires are being run.
Because you did the,
employees, appointees, and others.
because I was just there today.
But it's interesting.
Yeah, that's, I remember this is the one that they sent the questionnaires out to the employees.
Work on our driveway.
Y'all ready to go? Ready to go?
I'm Peter Wright.
Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you. All right, yeah, I will, thanks everybody for coming. I'll probably just sit right here and, we'll do our introductions. Everybody has a little agenda here. I know I sent the email out, in the last week. There's actually an agenda. Yeah, you can look at that too.
What is this?
Yeah, that's something I, just as a kind of supplemental.
I know this.
So welcome, and just wanted to thank everyone. We have, it looks like we have 4 members of the planning commission that were kind of unofficial capacity, serving on the comp plan committee, and then there would be 5 members of the general public. And I see at least 4, I guess Misha would be one that's missing, so hopefully maybe she'll be here. You know, this, we'll have a presentation, we'll have a little introduction, but just, you know, like I said in the email, I've done a few comp plans, and I know Jennifer has been involved in several as well. I'll introduce everybody here in a minute, but you know, compared to the day-to-day sort of grind of hearings and building permits and special use permits and all these things, it's kind of fun to kind of sit back and just think about the future. And I always remembered when I've been doing planning for about 20 years, and when I started school and was in planning, a professor got up and said everybody wanted to be into planning and do this type of as a career, and says, you know, what is planning? And I remember we all just kind of sat there and looked like, is this a trick question? So I'll just ask you, what is planning? Anybody have a good answer?
Preparing for the future.
That's it. That is the textbook answer, is preparing for the future. Simple as that. So this is what we're trying to do, and the comp plans. And again, we'll get into that in a second when we kind of go over some of the things on the PowerPoint here. Lost my train of thought here, but we'll talk a little bit about, you know, the state requirements, why we do this, what's required to be in the plan. Essentially, we have a broad latitude to sort of prepare for, in multiple fronts, what we might think our future would look like. Now, I don't know if we're going to be able to cover every topic, and that's, you know, the plan is generally, you know, is a general in nature, but there are a couple things that are required. So we'll get into that in a second. I guess first thing, we'll just go around, if you don't mind, we'll start back here, and, you know, I'm Ligon Webb, county planner. Been from Madison for 3.5 years. I actually live over in Luray and commute over here, and I've been here and just love working for Madison. Everybody I've met, it's been great, and I'm just happy to be part of this process, and you know, looking forward to next, you know, 8 to 12 months working on this with the folks in this room, and looks like we have some folks that maybe aren't on the committee that are here too that are interested. That's awesome. These meetings will be advertised, put on our website. Anyone who wants to show up can absolutely show up. So, starting back with Mr. Fisher.
I'm Mike Fisher. I'm a Macedonian, was Well, I was born in Charlottesville and moved to left for the Army and college, of course, and then came back here, was on the planning commission not too long ago, I think, at least 5 or 6 years. And I was part of putting the, last comp plan together. I just love Madison County and hopefully, we plan for the future, we have a lot to talk about. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Don McCowan, I'm with Piedmont Environmental Council, I work here in Madison, PEC, and just here tonight to listen and observe. I'm excited to kind of watch the county go through this process. As everybody's already said, it's a really important, critical process, and I'm just happy to kind of listen and follow along. Thanks.
I'm Nathan Cowan, born and raised in Madison, owner-operator of Cowan Roofing, on the planning commission here, really just as general public interest, but
I'm Peter Rice, and we've lived in Madison since 1977. Actually, before that, I taught at Woodbury Forest School for a couple of years. I'm the founder of Plow and Hearth, and now we run a small third-party logistics company actually located in Plow and Hearth Distribution Center. I was on the planning commission many years ago, and was involved with the comp plan way back then.
Glad to be here.
No introduction needed for these folks up here. But I'm Alan Nichols. I'm Virginia Valuations, an appraisal firm. My wife and I moved here about 6-7 years ago, raising children, and enjoy the country lifestyle, and we just love it here an awful lot. So looking forward to getting to know all of you and being a part of the process.
Well, look at me. I'm not here.
The press.
I'm Anthony Clatterbuck. I'm a local builder. I'm descended from the original Germana settlers and pretty much direct descendants for 10 generations in Madison County. I love this county. I want to see it be a home for our native children to live. I want to increase our tax base. I want to have a growth area that will support us in the future without carving up all our beautiful agricultural land. That sounds a little strange from a builder and developer. But I do things because the only avenue that I have to do them is follow the rules. So I'd like the rules to accept Madison people and keep them where they are.
Yeah, I'm Carter Yallum, currently on the Board of Supervisors. I was on the Planning Commission with the last iteration of the comp plan. It's interesting. It's a great exercise, and I'm looking forward to it.
I'm Faye Oots. I won't go through everything I do, but right now I'm on the planning commission. I've been here, I guess, 11 years. I helped write the last plan, did all the legwork with everybody else and interviews, everything that we did. I thought we did a good job of surveying what the county was like then. So now we're looking at a very different look from 5 years ago, I think. And I'm looking forward to contributing to the changes that we have. And, I wasn't born here, but I married into the family that was part of the Madison settlement way back. And our farm has been in our family since 1892. And I feel like I fight sometimes for Madison more than some of the natives do. So definitely still committed.
Steve Carpenter, also on the planning commission, and like Nathan, I'm observing tonight.
I'm Peter Work. I'm a semi-retired lawyer. My wife and I bought a farm here some 37 years ago, I think. Served on the planning commission for some time and was involved in the last comprehensive plan ever.
I'm Mike Snyder. Unlike Mike Fisher, I was not in the Army, I was in the Navy. And so Navy moved me around. I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina. So I've been kind of in the East Coast area, but the Navy moved me around a lot. Wound up in Virginia Beach for about 30 years, and been coming back and forth to Madison now for 12. Been
full-time here for 3 years now. And I'd like to see the county do what it needs to do in a great way.
I'm Clay Jackson. I farm a little, I'm on the board, done a handful of stuff. Glad everybody's here.
You got one more person.
We got one right here, two right here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry I'm late, coming out of Charlottesville, it's east. I'm Isha Jones. I've been in Madison, I guess, 10 years now. My husband's a native of Madison. Full-time job is I'm a registered nurse at UVA. Been there almost 20 years now. Thank you for your service. Tomorrow's Veterans Day. I was in the Army. I sit on a lot of state boards dealing with my profession. 3 kids, a dog, and a husband.
In that order, yeah.
All right, and I get to hold the last place here. It's honored. Jennifer Little, Regional Planner at the Rapidan, oh goodness. It's always a tongue twister. Rapidan Regional Commission. I'm helping you all with this process, and I am definitely looking forward to it. I'm not a Virginia native. I've been here nearly 4 years, so I have a little bit of a learning curve to do. But I hail from the West Coast, and I admit I absolutely love being here. Virginia is a wonderful place, and you guys have a fabulous county, so I'm excited to be part of this process as well. And I look forward to getting to know each and every one of you.
Misha, come on up here.
I'm here.
No.
Up here, you can come up here, we don't care.
And I will say, process-wise, yeah, I'm thinking, like I said in the email, you know, ideally, we meet, you know, we're trying to shoot for more or less a year process.
There you go.
Meet between 8 and 12 times maybe, depending on, you know, what kind of gets done in those meetings. You know, my thought is that we will obviously, you know, we'll engage the general public, several, maybe, you know, do a survey, and again, that's something that we can kind of discuss and sort of, you know, combine tonight, and then maybe some sort of a main event, maybe at the fire hall, where we get people in looking at maps and different planning scenarios and all those type of things, maybe, you know, somewhere midway through that process. So that's sort of how I see this, envision this process going. And, you know, Jennifer, you know, this is our consultant. She's with the planning district, and she'll do a lot of the writing and editing and bouncing things back and forth with her. So that's sort of, you know, we'll provide you with information to look at. You feed it back, spit it up, send it back to us, and we'll kind of do that back and forth. But I do, you know, like I said, I want to keep those meetings, you know, ideally that I'm just thinking hour and a half, sort of. We have to run over, but having kind of good, efficient meetings, we've got, hey, let's get these things done, and we can go on and take a, you know, another month to 6 weeks for us to work on things and bring back what we've done. So I guess what we'll do
I have
is,
a question.
yeah.
Was the town invited? And if they were and didn't come, I really think that, I don't know what kind of pressure we could bring.
Yeah,
I think they should be here.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can't say that, well, we can definitely put them on the email list, and, I mean, you know, we put it on our website, but I can definitely make a formal reach out to Mr. Lamar and make sure they're invited. I mean, everyone's invited, but yeah, I can do that. All right, so we got our introductions done, and then we'll just, why don't Jennifer, you take this and.
All right, so some of you have gone through a comprehensive plan update already, so you're well aware that this is actually state required, that every jurisdiction has a comprehensive plan. It's ideal to take it off the shelf and dust it every 5 years or so and see if there's any updates, and it sounds like from some of the conversations I've had, there's definitely time to look at it again. And so this, essentially, it's just, this slide is just explaining where the state is coming from and clarifying that, what needs to be in the plan. So, surveys and studies of existing conditions, trends, growth trends, and probable future requirements of Madison's territory and the people that live here. And so hopefully we'll touch on that with the data that we're going to cover tonight so we can start generating those ideas. Some of you, because you've been through this process before, you already know that this is your guidance document for all of your planning policies for the next 5 years, if not the next 20. And so, and these are just quotes from the Code of Virginia that just explains the purpose and the scope.
Yeah, and I would say, general in nature, there's no right or wrong way to do it. There are a couple of things that are required. Otherwise, a lot of communities will just dust it off, change a few things, re-adopt it. Some communities will actually go through a whole, build it from the ground up every 5 years. I would say majority, probably somewhere in between. That's kind of what we're doing here. We're sort of in between. I think, from my observation, I think that the last few years, there've been some kind of a little bit of a change. It feels like that, if you pay attention to any of the meetings that we've had, at least recently, the comprehensive plan has been a big topic. What do the citizens want to see? Maybe other than the ones that show up to the meeting, what is the vision? So, yeah, I think that covers that one.
Okay. So these are the areas that the comprehensive plan would like us to touch on. Most of them are recommended, not all are required. The 3 components that are required this time around is transportation and housing. Specifically, they would like to have a component on affordable housing, and the newest one is manufactured housing. So this is just something that has changed over the last couple of years. And so I looked at the last 2 plans, and there definitely it's housing has been touched on. And using this as an example, I think we're gonna need to go a little bit deeper on this time around. But outside of that, we can go many directions with land use and zoning, economics, environment, the physical and community assets. That's talking about your public services, infrastructure, parks and recreation, schools, sports facilities. I'm trying to think. I don't think there's is there a hospital here in Madison County? No? So, okay, so that one off the list. But it's just to give us a general idea of all the areas that we can touch on. It does not have to have every single one of these points.
So are you saying that if we don't include these, they get copied from here, or we just don't address them?
What they would like, I think, what I gather from the code is that it would be ideal to touch on each one of those components, but specifically the items that are applicable to Madison County. Is that
Including others than what's the housing?
It could include.
We know the housing.
Yes,
We know all
yes.
the others too,
Right.
so, okay.
And we have a recommendation for, I think in that memo I sent, we have some topic areas that we'll get to in a minute.
Yes.
Yeah.
okay? So, this is where we get into a little bit more on the topical areas that we're looking at putting in this plan. Do you want to take?
Yeah,
this
so, what we have here, are, if you looked at, a lot of the comprehensive plans, I think you'd probably see what's up here, left at what I call the kind of meat and potatoes as the plan elements. What are you actually planning for? What are you creating, goals, and maybe strategies for achieving those goals? Introduction, plan, foundation. I think that just kind of lets the reader, if you pick this up, know, what is the purpose of the plan? Why do we do it? We just talked about, what we're required to do from the state. one of the things the code requires is also, you see that background facts, existing conditions. I think before you move forward, think about those plan elements, you need to think about, well, where, and when Jennifer and I have been working on these demographics, and I've always loved demographics and numbers and analyzing these things. My feeling is you kind of need to know where you come from, have a good snapshot of where you are to maybe understand where you're going. I mean, there's some things about agriculture that she's found that I thought was pretty fascinating. Our average age, and we'll show you those in a minute. It's pretty interesting. The one thing, I don't believe this was in the last plan, but is creating a kind of an overall vision statement. And I think tonight, if we have time, that's why I put this up here, is it's just sort of, vision statement to me are fun. I've done this several times, is just, again, there's really no rules to it. Just, if you were, I always say, if you were driving down Main Street in Madison and going up to Etla and going down to Somerset, what would it look like? What would you see? What would your ideal Madison County be in 20 years? Again, maybe based on some of that background facts and where we're kind of headed. So we'll do a little exercise maybe to end things. And then here are the plan elements. I mean, again, these are just suggestions. I think these are pretty standard to look at the sort of, this is the area that we're going to plan for, our land use, our environment, transportation. We have a lot of good data for transportation and maybe things like what intersections need to be improved. I know we've already got some lists and things out there that'll be easy to kind of maybe bring into this. Housing, my feeling is this has become, maybe even the last couple of years with the tourism that we've seen, we haven't talked about this later, but second home buyers in the community, which I believe, I've been putting in building permits for the last 2 months, and I can tell you, there are a lot of people with addresses that aren't in Page County. A lot of people who own property. I would dare to guess that I'd almost probably guess a quarter are people from outside the county that maybe have a second home or property here. So housing to me is really one of the most vital elements to this. Of course, it's the one that's required by the state. Economic factors, employment development kind of speaks for itself, and I think the background information will lead us. This is a county that has a 2.5% unemployment rate. Matter of fact, it is one of the lowest in the state, if not the lowest in the state. So as you plan forward for thinking about economic development, where's the, if you're already at full employment, where do we go for expanded, or do we need those necessarily expanded opportunities? But again, that's something to talk about. Recreation, community facilities, utilities. To me, the last one on there is really significant. We've all heard the conversations with RSA, potentially upgrading that plant. That all ties back into land use and environment, and potentially, if that is upgraded and does have more capacity, again, just my thoughts is that Fishback Road area could be a corridor that could receive a modest amount of residential development, and maybe that preserves the balance of the county. Community design and built environment, I sort of look at that as, how do we want things that are built in the county to look like? Do we want large signage and lights, or would we like to see landscape? If there is commercial development, is there maybe a pattern the way things could look to maybe be just more attractive? It can still be the same, I'll always sort of say where parking lots are oriented, how signage looks, just little things to me. If we had a guide that's to tell people, hey, look, you're looking to do business here on 29 Corridor, we'd like for maybe your building to be oriented this way, and maybe not to the traditional, flatten it all out, put a parking lot in front, and in a store rear. Maybe there's a way of wording it that we can show examples of that might be appealing. I'm gonna put it back up.
All right.
So then, appendices, whatever we get from the public as far as surveys, all those type of things, that can be in the appendices. And in the comp plans I've done, every public comment we've gotten that written will be in the appendices. That anybody can go back and look at it and say, this day at this meeting, somebody wrote out I'd like to see Madison do whatever. It'll be there for everybody to kind of keep as a record, so.
All right, so this next section,
Any questions at this point?
oh, sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Did you guys have any questions with what he just mentioned? Okay,
I have one.
sure.
Have you seen comprehensive plans that delve into the schools more than what ours does? And exactly what is available, so when we're gonna build another school in Madison?
I have seen plans where they've talked about their local public schools in the sense that they felt that there needed to be more classrooms, more staff, and they connected that back to searching for more land in order to build more schools. Trying to think of what all I've seen.
Yeah, I would say generally no. Most don't. Usually schools will have their own facility plans. And for a plan like ours, in a county our size, that doesn't really have a lot of, and again, the data will sort of show this, a lot of, growth pressure. Young people are actually what we're in deficit of. So,
Well, one of these days, well, I guess I'll get to talk, but just, I was looking at a comprehensive plan. And what I vision as a comprehensive plan is a much smaller document that you can almost hand someone. And why would you want to live in Madison County? And if I was someone that had a couple of kids, it would be almost my first question. And if we don't address it, or we might not want to grade the school, but we want to maybe build it up as much as we can.
yeah, I mean, I think simply showing, from a plan perspective, I think showing the enrollment, the projection, along with, our school age and how it sort of fits in. I'd probably say as far as getting too in-depth on school facilities, is probably not really totally necessary for Madison.
Well-
It might be different for Prince William, but, so that's sort of my feeling about it.
What we wouldn't want to do, I mean, I do think schools, and we do address that, we have a page about our private and public schools and, just the demographics. So
Yes, sure.
someone can know. And that's easy to find out because they do have their own vision plan, whatever. What I would hope we would not want to do, which happens so much now, is, evaluation of our schools.
Yeah, that's,
That is
I would
not
say that's
appropriate
never,
for here.
that's really never.
No, so we would never put that in what we
Right.
need more of, or because their scores might be low or high, or whatever they're
Right.
published as, we make statements. No, we state facts, and that's it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to handle it.
And we can refer them to the website for the county, and that
Sure.
has all that stuff on.
So in plan examples, Jennifer.
Yep.
Just kind of gave us, I know you hopefully looked at the one that we did in 2018, but she just did some.
Yep.
Can you take this one
Hey,
here?
Jennifer,
Yes.
looks like were you gonna show us,
well-
something that might go to the public?
Yes, this I brought back. This is going to sound like a crazy story, but I brought this back from Scotland. And it is a snapshot of their comprehensive plan in an area called the Loch Lomond. It's a national park. I love it because it's a very simple piece of information they can put out to the public, and that is why I have been carrying this around for a number of years now, because it's really a neat piece. For us, here, let me just show you. This is, as long as I don't lose pages, this is the last comprehensive plan. Yeah, the public's not gonna read this. But something like that is something to entertain down the road when we get this format done.
Yeah, we could even do a supplement that sort of highlights, we do a plan, that maybe looks maybe a little different than this, but if we did a plan, we could also do maybe some sort of a supplement that's
I think
smaller.
Great idea.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Yeah, so I know first time I saw one of these, I went, oh my goodness, what am I looking at? So, That's something to keep in mind. Okay, so as we go through the process, I wanted to just give you some ideas to think about what the end result should look like. So as we go through this process and those decisions are made, we can make sure that we're working towards what that end result. So this is just, what is this going to look like? This one is a first example of vision and values from the last plan, and a couple. I think I have 3 different plans featured here. One of them is from Scotland, but another one is from a county very similar to Madison, and the other one is from town of Culpeper. I liked each one had a slightly different format. And so it kind of gives you an idea of what that first page could look like, and how to put together a vision, the background. So this is just food for thought. Yes,
Jennifer, are you gonna make these available to us?
I can. Yes.
I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, I can forward to
We
everybody.
can't read them on this, obviously.
But just you can see to the right, I mean, just sort of, you know, the left is our plan, and that's what we did in 17, 18, you know, it's typical, nothing wrong with it. But I think to the right, you just see, you know, things are, you know, visuals, pictures, you have some maybe pertinent data that's highlighted, and so there's some of those text box. So I think to the right is sort of our thoughts of how it might look and flow.
Well, if I remember last time, we collected all the material that went into it, as far as the interviewing everyone. Some of you were probably interviewed at that time, 5 years ago, various input, and wrote up what we wanted and whatever. And then other members, I never really remember that we told them they were to use this format, this style. I don't think I ever did. We just got it back from
Right.
our,
From the district.
yeah, whomever, yes, and they gave it to us this way, so I'm not sure we actually chose
No.
this, except we had a,
Patrick, but, yeah, that damn Patrick. It's, no, but you go back to the plan beforehand, and it was even more in kind of just a Word document,
right, we
essentially.
did say we
I
didn't
mean,
like.
going down this path makes it more user-friendly
Oh, I
all the way
agree.
across the board, and then going to the pamphlet, I mean, that's kind of,
Well, that would
after,
be a
that's
supplement.
great, but kind of down the road a little bit, and something we should take notes as we're going through. But I mean, we're all seeing, and Alan, that the public and us are using the comp plan, not kind of occasionally, like all the time, and it's such a living document, it's so vital. If we can make it so it's a more pleasant, readable type of
Oh, I agree.
document, good lord.
My point is, somebody else choose, like as a publisher, which I do publishing, I choose how it's gonna look, and then run it back to the people, and they tell me what they like and don't like.
And that's what we'll do.
That's kind of what we did
Right.
before, we didn't choose this, so. I mean, I think that can come down the road when we see what we
Yeah,
have.
and that's why we're showing you kind of to the right,
Yeah.
where we're sort of, the idea is.
Yeah, it'll be different, I've looked at it.
All right.
Plus it's online and searchable.
That's right.
Dang it, Alan.
So, and this is the same thing. This is just another example of different types of layouts that we can approach with. It can be a portrait format or a landscape format, and then we can figure out the format at a later date. So again, it's just food for thought as we move through the process.
What, I mean, our comp plan now is like, I don't know, yay thick.
Yep. Pretty good.
With these new formats, are you seeing the more condensed type of
That-
readable?
I would love to see it more condensed, because in all honesty, as somebody who's looked at a number of plans over the
They're
years,
exciting.
I mean, you get lost in the words. They start to blur together. And so I'm seeing more and more creative plans, such as the one on the bottom. I think that's my right. You notice that they have all those graphics in there, and they're easy to read, and you can reference them really quickly. A text-heavy document, you'd lose half that information.
So you're talking about losing a lot of information too, though, right? I mean, if you have the information that was on the old plan,
Right.
and you're doing something that's gonna be like that now, you've lost some information that,
I actually, even with some of these documents that have more pictures, illustrations, graphics, charts. I'm still seeing documents that are easily 80 to 100 pages, but they are more user-friendly. So that's something to keep in mind. I always think it's rather ironic. You got the word comprehensive, and then it's supposed to be general in nature. So it's kind of, okay, which way should we go? So we're going to try to hit both those points, but keep it, I think, as simple as and clear as possible.
Jennifer, may I just make one quick point? Actually, the part of the comprehensive plan that we wrote in 2018 was 33 pages long, and the rest of it was appendices.
Yes.
And much of the factual part, which was provided by your office and edited by us, was graphs and pictures and things like that. So, and one of our goals the last time around was to make this a usable document rather than a document that you put on the shelf and pulled out 5 years later.
Yes. Yep. So there's many different ways to approach this, and these examples are some of my favorites that I'm showing here with you.
I was just gonna say, we currently have 85 pages front and back with the 29 corridor study. And that's a big dip with, 29 corridor study, which looks pretty out of date too.
It is. Kevin did a good job, though.
And Jennifer, the pamphlet that you showed, or something like that, would really be what the county could give to the public without giving this huge document.
Yes.
That's the way it's used, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it basically is to give them more of a high level viewpoint, and then if they want more information, then
Follow the link,
yeah.
follow.
It's kind of what Mike was getting at, I think, is something that could be given to somebody who's thinking about moving in the county or whatever.
Right. Okay. So, and this is just another example. This is one of my favorite examples because I've seen a lot of different types of maps. The one on the lower right is actually an agricultural land use map. And I know that Madison is got a lot of agriculture, and so if this was information that we could obtain, it would really help give you guys a clear understanding in the public, a clear understanding of how agricultural lands is being used. The other map there in the center is more focused on housing and communities, but if you notice that it kind of pulls away from a large overall all-encompassing map that shows everything, but instead it focuses on a few elements, and it's much easier to read, and that was one of the reasons why I featured it. The call out there on the bottom where it's gray and it's got the different colors is the smaller area, and that really gives you just that smaller, gives you an idea of what, I'm trying to think of what they call the little hamlet, how those land uses are separated, and in that smaller spot rather than an overall encompassing map. Let's see. So this, again, just to give you an idea of what kind of outcomes you want to see as we near towards the end. So this is something to think about. Okay.
So, Jennifer, would you have a current land use map and a future land use map in different parts of the comp plan, or in close proximity to each other?
We can.
Either way?
Yeah, I mean, there's no absolute one way to do this, and so as we move through and get to that point, really it's going to be more of a how you guys feel it best presents. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a zoning map and then an actual, we talked about an actual land, like what is the land, you have a zoning map, that tells you, what, different areas of the county are zoned for, but you might actually want to have a map. Well, what are these different areas being used for right now? I mean, you have agriculture areas that are essentially residential. So, we'll go through and try to inventory all the, and that's a good thing about our GIS, it's, we had this tool 20 years ago, and, we really have good tools to be able to, see what our actual on-the-ground land use is in all these different parcels. So those two maps will definitely be in.
And I will note too that, as you go through these slides, I should have mentioned this earlier, there should be a link with each one of these examples to where I pulled them from, so you can explore those a little further and get some ideas on what you like or don't like from those other plans.
And I'll forward this third one tomorrow.
Okay, so.
But she can do it again. I'll come in tomorrow, so.
So this is just another continuation, looking at the housing component, and just gives you an idea of, I think, like, two of my favorite plans are featured here that really did a nice job organizing neighborhoods, housing, and where you want housing to be, where they want housing to be directed. So again, just another example of another way of looking at things, to really help convey the messaging in the plan. Any questions on this one? Okay. We got one more of these examples. Here's one for transportation. I borrowed, where's that? I borrowed from Culpeper and the county that I mentioned earlier. It's Whitman County. It's a heavy agricultural county, and these are they have two different ways of explaining their transportation systems, and because they were a little bit different, that's why I put both of them in here. And so this just again is another example to look at and think about what you want the outcome to be. And so I wanted to make sure that I touched on several different options.
And here's a good map that the GIS person up at the Regional Commission did with accident data. There's something that could be in the plan, and just for instance, again, this is really good. Shows the various, it tells you the different type of accidents from minor to fatal, kind of categories, and it shows you sort of a heat map of where the different accidents are taking place. So when we get into the transportation part, this is just something that we can, for example, we've got all kinds of great maps here, but that's just one that really, just for example.
And he printed these out and handed them to me today and said, here, you could use these.
Not me, the GIS person.
Yes, yeah, our GIS person. Okay. And so, wow, I really wanted to make sure I hit on several areas, didn't I? Economics. So we've got some different options on economics. If we were looking at land use, for example, where you wanted some economic development, that example in the middle is something that can give you at least food for thought on how you'd like to convey that information as well. So, got some different ideas for you. Okay, next one is, are we ready for the data?
Yeah, so this is now, we kind of, we're wrapping up, maybe what the plan could look like and all those type of things. So now before we get into maybe thinking about a vision statement, throwing some words out to write down, is to kind of get an idea of, at least what the data is saying about Madison. I think it's pretty interesting. So,
okay.
Let it speak for itself.
All right. So, as you all know, we're at the beginning of this process, and this just is showing you where we are in the what phase we're in here in the process, and where we're hoping to get to, and the time frame we hope to get to. And as we move through this will be updated. Okay, so as we get into the data, there's a couple of pieces of information that I want you to be aware of, that as I was looking through this information, I looked at the previous plans. what was there, what wasn't there, what we can update, and started from that standpoint. As I was collecting additional data and analyzing it, I was also thinking about, okay, as a planner, we want to think about social equity, balance that with economics, and balance it with the environment. So as we move through this process, that's a fundamental basis on what a comprehensive plan is supposed to function as that balance, considering as many aspects as possible. And I know that sounds like a lot at times. But we are losing my train of thought. Can anyone tell me what time of day it is at this point?
Could you answer a question really quick?
Sure.
Could you define the term social equity?
I just searched.
Well, that's one of those big words.
Everything will get a different definition, but I can think that if I am somebody who's inquiring about the process and the term equity gets thrown around so much, in the context of what we're developing, I'd like the term defined.
I'm curious to see if Clay has the same definition, but my simplest layman's explanation is finding ways to give people at the lowest incomes or marginalized communities opportunities to raise themselves up. And so when we talk about the shrinking middle class, the activities that we do here through this planning process, we hope is supposed to be how do we, what kind of strategies can we develop or, to help with policies to equalize, that's the equity part, to give people that equal opportunity to succeed in whatever life choices they have.
And I'll give a real simple example. I mean, we get the housing data. We look at the income, the average income, we look at the average cost of a house. It's sort of, where is that balance in this community? When most of your residents have an income that can afford X amount of dollars a month in rent or a mortgage, but your average housing price is $400,000 or whatever it may be. So I know that's a term, and equity, equality. But I think that as planners, before we maybe use these terms, that's what comprehensive plans are always trying to do, is trying to find a place for, again, solving some of the issues in a community. And housing, to me, is the one that kind of sort of jumps out as, hey, these numbers just don't match up. What are the strategies that we can sort of,
So you're kind of saying, we're trying to create a tide that will lift all boats.
Yeah, well, in this case, create a house, maybe a land use pattern that, more simply that.
John F. Kennedy.
Yeah, maybe a land use pattern or some sort of, maybe it's, promoting a certain type of housing, or areas where there could be more housing, where there'd be opportunities for folks that have an average household income of $50,000 to find a house, have an average household for $150,000 to find a house. That's not an easy task to do, but I think, if we're thinking about the entire community, that's why I think looking at these, this data will help us sort of understand what is Madison County as far as the economic and the social makeup of the county. So,
Clay, what's your definition of social equity?
This is the first thing that comes up when you search Google. It says social equity is concerned with justice and fairness of social policy. Since the 1960s, the concept of social equity has been used in a variety of institutional contexts, including education and public administration.
When I see this and I hear this, I think the word social opportunity fits better. Or equality instead of equity.
I think opportunity.
I like opportunity.
work.
Everyone should have the opportunity.
I think as we get further down this plan, it's like, and you want to build this Madison that fits for everyone, how are we doing that? So if you say opportunities, and as we go further into this plan, what opportunities are you providing? Instead of looking at it and saying, we looked at everything and we looked at these things and this is how we feel that we looked at everyone's current state to see how we can grow Madison together. Because saying opportunity, I'm gonna provide this for you. This is your opportunity, instead of saying, we've looked at this and this is how we're able to grow Madison by making sure that everyone's income's looked at a certain, or how people are building in Madison.
What's your rebuttal to that, Clatterbuck? What do you think?
Hope that
I'm
makes sense.
genuine.
I don't have a rebuttal to that, I love it.
Yeah, all right, there you go.
Yeah, I mean,
That's what I'm looking.
you know,
Good.
yeah, I mean, words, we've learned through zoning, words mean a lot, but I still think we're all sort of talking, whether you call it opportunity, equity, equality. We're still kind of saying, yeah, we'd like to have a Madison where everyone who lives here has an opportunity to, you know, to live their best life, and there's things that we could maybe do in a plan as governing officials to improve that. And some might be small, some might be large, some we can't control at all, you know, so.
Okay.
You all right?
Night. All right, here we go. Now we're gonna take a dive into the demographics.
Yeah, so interesting about the historic population trends. If you look here for the last 1800 to 2000, then we'll over to the right, we kind of come a little more to the modern, but you can see that, you know, I find it interesting that in 1900, there was 10,000 residents in Madison, a little over 10,000. You know, today we're a little over 13,000. If you see to the right, the plan that was done in 2000?
2006 and
Yeah.
2012.
Probably just did a real, at that time, you might have had a, you know, I think the last census, we had somewhere around 2% growth over that 10 years, from 2010 to 2020. It's kind of typical, you maybe try to compound that and look that out into the future and sort of say, you know, but it doesn't always work that way. So I think that the 2006 or 2000 plan maybe took more of a, you know, I don't necessarily was optimistic saying that we're going to grow, but just sort of had a predisposition where we thought growth was sort of the trend. But you can see underneath that is really the actual number, and it's actually, you know, been fairly flat as far as terms as the population growth. So that's sort of where we are. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't foresee, you know, that number in the next 10 years or 20 years all of a sudden mimicking what's above it in that sort of greenish, light green line. Anything?
I just, the thing that was interesting when I looked at this data, and that's the reason why we went back to the very first census count in 1800. In 1800, it was just over 8,000 people, and today Madison County is just over 13,000. I mean, that is probably some of the slowest growth I have seen. And so the greatest amount of growth was between 1970 and 2010, and then it's just really has not continued on that pattern. So I would say at this point growth has kind of stagnated or declined a little bit.
Is there opportunity to break this down even more granular to age?
That's coming.
Because that may be like.
Yeah, that's another. So, yeah, I think, you know, it sort of speaks for itself. Now, you get into population, does that mean that we don't, you know, and again, I always sort of say the X factor is those second homes. Those people who come in, which it seems to be, and it's the same way over in Page County. There is still, I think, a large, you know, I think the data does talk about, we have a little bit of data that seems to suggest that, but I still think there is a large group of folks that are here maybe, you know, part-time. That other, you know, I grew up in the south side of Virginia. Nottaway County, if you know what it is, there are no one that owns second home in Nottaway County that come from Richmond to go out for the weekend. Here, I think you could tangibly say it could be a quarter of the population.
But do we count those as population?
Well, that's a
If they're
good
not,
point.
what determines population growth then?
Right, well,
So
generally,
census
as
address.
a census is, the day you get that
Voters.
form,
That's what I would think.
Yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
just did that Tuesday.
right, right,
and
I think that's a good indication.
That's what we
Um,
checked, and we had observers from, they have a house here.
Right.
But they're not a citizen.
Yeah,
They don't pay, well, they pay taxes here, of course, you can't count that.
Right.
Because they own a home.
Right,
That would be a data point that would be quite useful to know is, well, for example, of the population growth, how much of that is from people who have bought property in the county from somewhere else and moved in and built here, rather than what normally would be considered population growth from births and so forth. you know.
right, natural versus, right.
And your age thing would help with that, I think,
Yeah,
too.
we'll go to the next one.
This could take you into housing as well,
Yeah.
really. Mr.
So,
Clyde?
did you?
The weekend purchasers are typically a 5 to 10 year conversion to permanent residence. Most of them are just pre-retirement,
Mhm.
or they have a goal, like Cardi discussed, to come back home. You know, that's where it's coming from. I want my place in Nirvana, so I secure it now, build my house, and then as I can afford to move there, or as opportunity presents. And that's a lot of the building population that's currently coming to Madison, at least for my company.
Yeah. And, you know, I've seen it in the last 3 years, you know, and is it possible that there is a little change going on with now people can work remotely, and it's quite possible. Does the past data support that? Not at this time. But you know, just from the feeling that I get from talking to people, there are more folks that are coming in, even maybe to a certain degree, even younger folks that are more interested maybe than they ever have in living in a rural area. But if you look at this one, I think that the data to the right, I mean, you can look at the chart and see the very top where that, I believe that very top one is a 65 plus. You can see how that has grown. It's interesting in the 2020 where you can see the 65 plus and I believe that other one is that 5 to 19. Just go ahead and throw the 0 to 19. They're very similar in size. The senior citizens and let's call them junior citizens, but 65 plus is 1 in 4, nearly compared to Virginia, which is 16%. That's 2020. Median age is 46.4 compared to 28.6. So we've definitely in the last 60 years have gotten older. And 19 years and under is less than 1 in 5. Madison County's population has experienced periods of growth and decline over the last 2 centuries, although the greatest growth, as Jennifer had said, has slowed since 2000. Projected population growth suggests that the population should have been over 15,000, but again, that was that projection we saw. Racial demographics have experienced slight changes. Anything else here, Jennifer, you'd like to add to this?
Let's see. No, we touched on the median age.
Yeah, but one of the things that we'll address at some point along the way are the jobs, for instance. You know, a lot of people do not want to live and have to drive a long distance, even though our ways to get north or south are pretty good, or whatever.
Right, we got a slide.
Yeah, so jobs and whether we keep them here or whether they ship out, and that has to do a lot with that age group, and I see that in my literacy too, where they work.
Well, yeah, keep that in mind as we move forward, because we'll talk a little bit about the commuting patterns a little bit later here.
I'm gonna pick up on what Mr. Carter brought. He said it very well. But 2 farms close to where I live in, you know, both sold over 1,000 acres total of the 2 farms. These folks both live in DC, Fairfax, DC, Maryland, in that area. they haven't retired. But they own and control 1,000 acres, and they're looking at putting it in conservation easement. So when we look at our growth, you have that going on throughout the county, which I think we do. Our growth is not going on. They're not gonna do anything with it. I mean, if you based upon the current economic, they're gonna stay there, live there when they retire, like Mr. Cladwell just said. But they're not gonna get rid of it. I mean, they're gonna put it in a conservation easement, and that land is frozen. So
Yeah,
there
there's
may
not,
be a house come out of it somewhere, but not many.
right, there's just not a lot of, available land that you could develop that would really significantly, as I see it, change population trends. So go, Nick.
Okay.
Basically, it's been the same for the last 200 years.
Yeah,
I mean,
right,
yeah,
right.
there's no, I mean, look at the last chart, and then look at the population, we go from 18 to 13, or 8 to 13, excuse me, I mean, there's really no change in Madison.
If you listen to the folks that come in here, most folks don't really want it to change either. They're not seeking lots of growth and, things to come in here. We all like a new business here and there. We like to see it do well, but I don't think we're looking to, become the next, Charlottesville.
Right. They would have moved to Culpeper if they wanted that, right?
We have to realize what's happened around us. Culpeper had an incredible amount of already zoned land. And when Northern Virginia's Loudoun County shut down, the major developers looked around and found it. And they basically took Culpeper from a small town and popped it into the next category.
To a small city.
Now, that land is, for all intents and purposes, gone. There's few spots left, and there's a lot of land left, which if they follow their comprehensive plan, it's gonna take a while for them to develop. But that creates pressure on Madison County. Greene County's development creates pressure. I'll tell you what else, the fiber optic network or high-speed internet in Orange has made lots disappear overnight and go up in value by 30%. So we need those things. We want those people to come here and work here, but we have to plan for the growth pressure that we're going to receive.
And I think we also have to look at, I work at UVA. UVA has bought out Culpeper, Prince William, and the merger has happened. And so it's gonna bring more physicians, it's gonna bring more nurses, it's gonna bring more folks who are gonna work in those areas because they're recruiting hot and heavy to bring folks to those areas. And so clinics are gonna go up and expanding care. So there's gonna be a lot of pressure there.
So on household income, I think the interesting thing about household is is not individual. You're actually looking, if we've got 6,000 some houses in the county, you're actually looking at that house. Now, some houses might have 3 income earners in it. Maybe you have mom, dad, a couple kids. Maybe you just have one person. And I think as we look here, I think this another slide talks about the size of the households, which is interesting. But you can see as far as income goes, our median income right there in the middle is 63. In the region, that's the Rapidan, Rappahannock, Rapidan region. So got Fauquier, Culpeper, Orange, Madison, Rappahannock. You can see the regional median. That's just in the middle. Most of the times, it's more than one income earner, but not always. It just varies. It could be 3, it could be 1 earners, and you can see the median in Virginia. So, I would expect Madison to be a little lower than the region. It's considerably lower, but that's sort of like the median house of our, whatever it is, 6,000 some housing units. That's what the median household income is. And you can see to the left there, again, with Virginia being the green, the red being the region, and the blue being Madison, that at 50 to 100. 149 to 50, let's just say that is your 50, I'm just doing 25, you know, that's around half.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Just over 38% of households earned under $50,000 a year for their annual income in 2020. So if that kind of gives you an idea, you're talking more than 1 in 3 households earns under 50,000.
And another question, how, when you say income, what's your definition? Does that include all of the folks that we have here in our county? We would need, well, let's just say this. I know personally a lot of folks that are living on disability and or substance of some
Did that
sort.
work out with income?
Does that include that?
Yep.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, all sources of
I
income.
would like, we get some source on that breakdown too, because I think that's much more significant than what that shows.
Bureau
And I
of
don't
the
know.
Census.
Yeah, and I was just guessing, it says here total households, to the right, at the bottom of the blue, total households, 2019, 2020, we're 5,000 some, so I'd said 6. I guess family households, and that sort of breaks that down, how many are family just means 2 or more people who are related in a house. Then you look at non-family. Again, the red is 2020, the blue is 2,000.
10.
And they both
Oh,
gone
I'm
down.
sorry, yeah, 2010.
Go to Peter.
Even my glasses.
Go to Peter.
Megan, is there any data in plans like this as far as the cost of housing goes?
We're counting on that one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're working our way
I
there.
noticed that in the plan.
Yeah.
That there-
Yeah, owner household versus, and that number is, I think in Page County, that number, upper 60s to lower 80s is pretty standard. You're 78 and a half owner, 21 and a half renter. And that's pretty consistent, I think, a lot of areas.
Ligon, do you have any data about why both of those have gone down slightly in the past 10 years? I mean, we clearly have new housing going on all the time.
A wild renter.
Either one, they both went down, it shows.
Oh,
If
I
I'm
got
reading
you.
that correctly. Total households in both categories are slightly lower in 2020 than they were in 2010.
Yes, that was part of the population decline from 2010 to 2020. So the county did lose about 115 households.
Yeah. Even though there's consistent number of building permits being issued every month.
Yeah, we'll talk about building permits
Okay.
too. I've got that data. Well, I can tell you right now, I don't know if it's in one of our street. I did do building permits for the last 10 years. These are single-family dwellings. It's right here.
Mhm.
I don't know if we have a slide up here, but single-family, that's including manufactured homes. So you got 34 in 2012, 35 in 2013, 39, 2014, 46, 2015, 47, 2016, 33, 2017, 2018, 69, 2019, 56, 2020, 52, and then 2021, 81, 60, 67, and this year, as of a week ago, I could add 2 more to this, we're at 69 for this year. We've only got another month or so left, but fairly consistent, but it has been a little bit of steep. I mean, and based on that, if you say there are 2 people in every house, it would lead you to believe that maybe we should be increasing population, but.
Well, let me pop over to
Yeah,
that next one slide.
okay.
Is it fair to say that if we look at the previous slide before this one, and the top 2 incomes, and we compare that to the age of our community, it's what Faye was saying, folks that are retiring, in that 65, receiving SSI, and they're just no longer in the workforce.
So
Is that a fair comparison?
if I understand your question, if you look at this slide, the age of householder, you've got one out of 3 households is the householder is age 65 plus. So it kind of fits within the pic,
Yeah.
yeah.
We're going to continue to see under 35 retreat because of affordability.
Yes.
And the 65 plus continue, our graph is going to continue to move in this direction. Now, you look at the number of building permits this year, and as you watch them for the next 2 years, you're going to see them recede very quickly back to what I would call pre-boom levels, you know, because of affordability, you know, as the interest rate rises. All of that people that would buy a starter home or a new family are out of the market. They have to seek the rentals, and the rentals have gone up 20 or 30 or 50% in price. So they're almost being pushed to leave rather than live here.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, you know, this is a regional problem. I mean, we talked about it, this is how, you know, we did a housing study a couple years ago, but household size, you can see the largest in 2020, and it's still, in 2010 too, you can see that, you know, that middle, that two-person is your largest sort of segment. And then, you know, one person is, you know, one person, and the 4+ people, of course, very similar. It's like 21.4, at least in 2020, and 21.5. So you have just as many one-person households as you do, say maybe a, kind of what you traditionally say is a 4 people in a household. And I think, you know, if you look at that number nationally, as far as the size of households, it's done this, it's gone down in size nationally. But Madison is a good example of that. And then, you know, again, his on the right, just kind of a good indication showing you the age of the households. Is skewed much more toward the older population than, say, the younger.
Yeah. Any questions on this one? Shall we move on? We're running close on time here.
Yeah.
One quick comment from some of the things that Faye has been noticing. In an primarily agricultural county, that skew is much more significant than it would be in an urban county.
Yeah, urban counties, I don't want to say
can't
they're
even-
opposite,
I don't even want to see
but
a
they're very,
comparison.
you know, they're much more skewed to the, you know, you have more younger, so,
I mean, just the fact that we have that number of 65 or older households is more significant in this county than it would be in, say, Fairfax.
oh, yeah, I mean, I would say they probably skew much more toward the younger. You know, the average age there might be, you know, 38, you know, mean age.
And then when you throw in other facts that I have about the income from farming, which is what we want to advertise and what we want to be, rural, which I hope we get to talk to next time, is what we do believe about terms and whatever. It's kind of like hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, we see it and we know it, and yet when you see the percentages, it's really hard, but it's factual. So we need to address that.
The median income has a direct effect on the last chart. The higher the median income, the more the chart moves back to a younger demographic, because they have better jobs and they have more affordability.
Yeah.
And they're not retired.
Our folks have, because of our median income and our job opportunities in our home, we have to travel to go make money, and many times you can't afford to travel, so you have to relocate to make money. So we're going to continue on this trend until there's a way we can find more opportunity. One of those ways is with high-speed internet, because that's gonna change our median income, because a lot more higher paid people are gonna wanna be here and stay home.
Yes, that's
It's
true.
already happened.
Yeah.
It is happening. I know one right now,
Yeah.
just moved back.
Just built a house for it, so.
Northern Virginia, moving back here.
So we can kind of go through age of housing. Just interesting, you look at 1960, you know, go from 1960 to say 2010, you know, from the purple, the green, red, the blue, that is, you know, that's the majority, and I think that's consistent, probably pretty consistent with most of the state. And then you can see some of the older housing. You know, I'm seeing 26, maybe about 30% is, you know, just we call, you know, pre-1960. just FYI, I don't know if that really tells us necessarily a lot, but, housing stock for the most part is consistent. It's not like we have a lot of older homes. We do have some, but you can see the majority. I would say a newer house is 1964. 60-year-old house is still well maintained. It's not.
Didn't count the 1860s.
Well, we got a few of those.
Yeah.
They're in the 1939 or earlier class, so there's not a lot, which is interesting. So this other chart, the housing occupancy status, this kind of goes to what Ligon was talking about earlier with second homes. Do you guys also have short-term rentals?
I think we have a few.
That you know about. Let's just say that.
That's
Yeah.
for another night.
Only that's
Yeah.
another whole,
Don't open that bag
we
tonight.
don't wanna do that.
Is this vacant 16, our housing stock, is that what's supposed to be, 16% is vacant?
Yeah,
See, I believe this is where the short-term housing, the way the census works, you take that day they get that census form, is who's in that house. And if it's no one there to answer that, they don't get it back, then that's gonna be counted as vacant. That vacant house could be quite a nice log cabin. So that's 16%. I by no means believe that anywhere near 16% of the housing in Madison County is vacant. I don't see.
The majority that's utilized.
Right, and I think this number,
Roundabout roads.
I would be even more dare to say that vacant is even higher, because some of them might have been erroneously counted in that census, maybe not. But I think it's a good chance that 16% is maybe 20-25% second home. When they showed up at the door that day and knocked, they didn't get anything because no one lives there full time. Or they just come in on weekends and rent.
Or it's a rental.
Right. So I think that's a good number to just to sort of note. And I can tell you 20 years ago, it'd be interesting to look at the census, it would have been nowhere near that number.
agree with that.
4 or 5% would have been, is a pretty high vacancy rate for any community. 16% to me suggests that there's something else going on there.
yeah,
So,
all right.
By vacant, well, let me clarify this. I know that there are lots of old abandoned farmhouses in the county.
Right.
Are they considered part of the vacant count, or is that
I mean, they
just-
could be, but I just
They
don't
don't- they
think
don't
it
have
would be
current
anywhere
addresses.
near 16%,
Yeah.
Of the housing stock in the county is vacant. I think more accurate would be more 2 or 3%.
of actual habitable
Right,
housing?
right.
Yeah.
This is Madison County, where a lot of the residents down here on the lowlands are displaced by the park.
Right.
And many of those residents do not report to the government.
No.
They have no use whatsoever to giving government information about them and their homes. There are other folks that don't do that, so that is a portion of those numbers.
That's right, I agree. You don't want your income counted or looked at, because you are one who can take cash, you don't want your house counted either, or anything
And
else.
there's a very heavy cash industry that isn't going to respond.
Never.
Yeah, look at 9% of housing is, this is no surprise, 92% is single-family home, 4% mobile manufactured. I think it seems a little low, but if you look at median household income,
And then look at this. So the second chart is the median house value trend. I got that from the Piedmont Realtors Association. This chart is, the caveat with this chart is because of the limited number of homes that there are in Madison County. So at any given time, whatever homes are on the market influence this chart. There are other counties here in the region where the line is a little smoother. It's not quite as, shall we say, erratic. But this kind of gives you an idea of what the market has been like over the last 2 years.
The numbers are low. They're reported low because what you end up with is houses that folks would want to, if you're looking at move-in ready homes, that, somebody would want to occupy, your numbers are much higher. A lot of this, if you're just taking all the home sales, like they pull all the MLS data, then you're reporting a lot of things that are not move-in ready, that sell significantly under its 2-year trends, that need renovation and that are resold. The other thing that comes out of these trends that aren't reported in this kind of data is things like some of our neighbors who buy and sell homes, and they go up into a neighborhood and put a sign up, "I'll buy your house."
Mhm.
And those things transfer to the courthouse, but they don't get pulled out of the like this if it's coming from.
Right.
So what is the mean, and I have a hard time seeing this, what would be the,
Well, this is showing, you know, if you just look at your trend line, they're about 350. And if you want me to look a little deeper, I'd be happy to bring some.
Yeah, that'd be
some numbers
good.
to you.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to pull something just.
even 350, I mean, again, going back to what we know the income is, I mean, you can tell, it says where the median household income approximately 64,000. A household may qualify to purchase a home for 92,000. So you're a little over halfway there. And I just anecdotally looking at housing, I mean, 350 would seem to be probably, I mean, you would know better than anybody probably, but they'll probably get you in the door, 350.
I wouldn't want to be a first-time homebuyer right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think this clearly shows a kind of a mismatch. So,
Yep, that was,
Do you think the snapshot of your timeline here is too short based on housing inventory?
this is what I was able to acquire from Piedmont Realtors, yeah.
and we can go back a little.
I mean, it just seems like, I mean, use as just an example, your anomaly in September of 22, or 21, excuse me. I mean, that could be influenced by one or two sales.
That's right.
Yes.
Very significantly.
Yes.
I just, it looks like a confusing chart that is too narrow in scope.
Well,
If you want to look at that, you got to pull the land value out and look at trends on another basis, because you're probably also including several hundred acre sales that go together, you know, with normal, 5 and 6 acre tracts that sell. So if you have to extract the land value and then apply your metrics that way in order to really see what the trend is.
Yeah, I mean, this chart is to give you a ballpark picture of what the housing market value, you know, what it's been looking like over the last 2 years. But I would also take it with a serious amount of caution because it is very limited data. So it's, you know, it's the best, it was the best ballpark picture I could give you.
You know, I would dare say the median house sale in Madison County, and I'm used to praise in this area some, you know, 20 years ago was, I wouldn't be surprised if it was less than $100,000.
Nothing that I build is on this chart. Because the customer has the land, or I have the land, I sell them the land, then I build them a house, and you can't enter it into the MLS. You're not allowed, or you're in violation. So the new homes that are being built are easily 100,000 higher than this
Yeah.
steadily.
I even if it's 350, I still think you'd probably be low, you're right. Way low. I mean, so,
Well, the other key piece with median, does everyone understand what that means? What's that?
Half for above, half for below.
Right, it's supposed to be that
is that
middle
nec-
point.
not necessarily the average.
Right, not the average.
Sometimes it is, but not always the average,
Yeah.
but just.
No. Median mode, want to get into that?
I've gotten those confused for years. It took me a while to get that, so that's why I asked, because yes, if you don't, if someone does not know what the word median means, this chart is like, what am I looking at? So, okay, let's move on to the next one.
Great.
All right, so I took a look at just a generalized view of economics in the area, and so I was interested in who lived in the area, what they were earning, is there any connection between their educational attainment, and so this is just a general overview of where residents are working, and I guess what their employment situations are like. And so you saw the household income a couple slides ago. So if you remember, the household income could be more than one person working. It could be 2 or 3 people bringing in income. So the chart there on the right, this is the average, not the median, the average or mean pay for positions related to either local government, manufacturing, construction, healthcare, and social services, accommodation, and food services. So it kind of gives you a ballpark of what people individually are earning as opposed to the actual household income. So you can see how these numbers would kind of help with the median income of 68,000. That's a pretty good indicator that there are multiple earners in quite a number of households.
And for a small rural county, local government, usually the school system is your largest employer.
Yeah.
That's not uncommon. And interesting, I don't compare it to Page, it's interesting about Madison is that the associate's degree and higher is actually a significantly larger percentage of people on this side of the mountain have associate's degree and higher than the other side. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But we're pretty consistent with, high school rates and all that, so I think we're kind of normal in that sense.
Are these numbers at the top of each of those columns, are they accurate? Because
Yes.
you're looking at like less than 1,500 people employed out of a county with 13,000 people in it. That doesn't.
I mean, is that
Yeah.
based on Madison?
Yes, that is based on Madison, but this,
Because right
Oh.
now, I'm telling you that farming, I mean, there's a lot of people doing transportation and farming right now, that's one. And two, you can't leave out the woodchucks in this county. And I'm sorry that there's more there than probably teachers.
Yeah, and they make more.
And they make.
But they don't report it.
They don't fill out the BDC form that they send out to everybody.
So, I do have a problem, that's it, I mean, I have a problem with that chart. Cause this county's not based upon that, this county, there's a
So
lot of
this is
people doing
showing-
a lot of different things.
These are just different, these are just a highlight of different, that's not everybody.
that's
Okay.
not
So
everybody.
there are other categories.
I think people hauling wood to
I mean, government workers in the county, 571, that's pretty consistent with the school system, and you throw in local county government. And we'll get to agriculture in a minute, but that's just some of the categories. But 2,700 in your workforce, you think about how many people are 65 plus, then you gotta think about people who are also below, say, 20, that's probably about right, as far as, and people, I don't guess people who work out of the county would be counted. Well, no,
Oh,
that's just in the county.
Yeah, this one is in the county.
There's in the county, 2,700 people employed in the county.
okay, so that doesn't cover all in county.
Yeah, and if you go out of the county,
And obviously, the
Right.
majority of the
your
employees
income
are
would
out of
be
the
counted,
county.
but your job
Okay.
where you're employed, 2,700 people employed in the county, so. Okay, that's a clarification.
Yep.
Let's go to the next one here so we can get.
Okay.
Which category would you put the woodchucks in, Mike?
well,
Entrepreneurs.
No.
yes, they will travel to DC, but they also cut a tree down at the Legion, they'll do both, so I'm not sure you can call them out of county, they're here, if they make a dime here, they will.
Yeah, their
And
income,
there's a lot
yeah.
of them, pull up in a truck that can have 4 people in it, 6 of them will come out. So, I mean, that's a lot of people in those trucks.
Well, here's commuting patterns. It looks like, we got 1,307 coming in.
I just have one question.
Yeah.
When we think about the plan, because I do think that last slide was misleading. It made us like, whoop. When we start digging deeper into the plan, are we considering that slide? Or are we considering like folks in Madison work? We're just not working inside of Madison when we think about our economic growth and where we want to be. So how do we approach that? Does that make sense? Is that?
Yeah, that chart on the last slide was just to represent the 5 most common employment
Okay.
situations.
Inside.
Inside the county. It is not a complete or exhaustive list of employment opportunities.
That's
Yeah.
good to know, because if we look at that and that, we would limit ourselves when we wanna look at where we wanna be, because.
Well,
Let me be clear that if this group here doesn't like that slide, we tell them, take it out, or change it, right?
Change
Right,
that
we
data.
can
There you go.
expand on it. I know you guys can't see this, but this is from the Virginia Employment Commission. This is the all these bars are all the employment type of positions for the county. So that
Good.
information was extracted from this.
We had that the last time too, but I had the same reaction that I hear people have about the slides we've just seen. It would be really useful, I think, to get more granular in our analysis of what people are doing for employment. For example, I know that a lot of people, as we get more broadband, are gonna be working here remotely. They're probably working for somebody in DC or someone in Los Angeles, for that matter. Doesn't matter where you are these days. So do those people get counted as working in
Yes.
Madison County?
On this chart right here, actually, I discovered that 571 people worked from home during 2020, which fit. Yes, it was COVID, so a lot of people worked at home. So if I can get updated data prior to the completion of this plan, it'd be interesting to see how that number changes.
That's gonna have to be.
500 people?
500.
I bet it's
That
much,
was-
I
that was
bet
shut
it's
down.
much higher than that.
That was not even, I don't think we ought to be comparing anything to 2020 much in that relationship. No, I mean, it's different. I mean, Twitter's shutting down, I mean, everybody's going back. Companies all over the place are doing this or that with, I know fellows that are coming here to remote now, which I was surprised. And others, you come into the office, government, you come into the office. 2020, nobody went anywhere much.
Yeah, I mean,
So that's not a
2020
good
is a
relation.
very tricky year because of everything that was going on.
2021, it started to open up and.
So we
Still
look at
is.
the commuting, if I understand this right, you got 1,300, a little over 1,300 coming into the county. And actually, I think that's my commute right there, right over the mountain there. Not quite that direct. And then you have, if I understand, that says 1030, that
Live and work in the.
live and work in Madison, okay. So we got people
Yes.
coming in, people live, and then you got 3,400 plus going out of the county. Now, that doesn't mean they're going that direction, they could go north, south, of course. And then you have like a little heat map here to the right showing the number of employment centers, and it probably does pick up some of the at-home people, but 41% of residents also work in the county. But 57% of the employed residents leave Madison County for work. 41% of the employed residents also work in Madison County, so that's an interesting number.
Do you have an overlay on either one of those, especially that right-hand one, that shows where the park boundaries are? Or is that pretty much the blank area there?
Work in the park.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I see a couple of hot spots up in that area. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So both these maps came from the census. We could look into an overlay and see if that's a viable possibility with our GIS people.
I was just curious. I was wondering if maybe that was Graves Mountain Lodge up there that's got the both sides up there.
Yeah.
It pops up and, that says that there's a business there.
Mm-hmm.
And we've learned this recently with this enormous number of people that have been coming up my driveway because somebody's business got listed at my house. So.
Sorry about that.
You got that. So
Yeah,
all these,
here.
a lot of the little things there show up as businesses, but they're not, it really is more we know where businesses are.
That last slide, doesn't represent any of the numbers we've seen tonight. There's 4,504 people employed basically in Madison and commuting out. We have 13,000 people in the county and 25% are over 65. That's awful disparity in numbers. The 4,500, it's thousands of us that go out and work every day.
Might be better to look at it as a ratio rather than.
I think the ratio would be the appropriate application for that. because there's no way that was picked up properly in the census.
I agree. It was surprised that 1,300 people come into the county. Because, I mean, we keep getting all this story about there's no jobs in Madison.
According to this number, I mean, it really is 21% basically are all government jobs. And they talk about one circular graph and people coming in and
Mm-hmm.
local. Part of the, some actually.
Well, I do think apropos, I do think apropos of what Steve just said, the fact that we have the lowest or one of the lowest unemployment rates in Virginia needs analysis. Because it may mean that there aren't any jobs in Madison County.
As an employer, I can tell you that we can't find.
You can't get jobs for everyone.
Yeah,
Go into a restaurant.
and I still say it goes back to the nature of the population, where you're trending a little older.
Well, but
That-
some of that is a little simplistic based on the age of the population that's here. I mean, we've got a substantial amount of people that are retirees or second, they're not counted into that. So employment, even though it looks really, really good, 2.3 or 3% or whatever it is, that's a very misleading calculation for Madison.
Well, I mean, I said, yeah, that's what say, you're taking out half the population that either are older, that don't work because of their age, and you've got a significant portion that are under 20 that maybe aren't done with school. So you really have a pretty narrow segment of the workforce, and I think that's consistent with a lot of communities.
Well, to be fair, the way that number is calculated also, whereas if you report that you are no longer seeking a job, then you have dropped out of the workforce and they no longer count you. So if you're a person who's gone a long period of time without employment and you lose hope, and, but say, then you're no longer included, even though you might take a job if somebody offered you one, you're not actively seeking it, or you haven't in 6 months. And depending on the rules applied when they took the number, sometimes if you've been unemployed for 6 months or longer, even if you're looking, you're no longer included in that number. And it skews it for a whole variety of reasons why they do that. But
And we're so small that one or two people could skew it.
when lack of reporting is another issue, we talked about it.
Right.
But it's the same everywhere. That's not.
No, not at all.
That's correct.
Now,
Why do you think that with somebody like you who has jobs to offer, there aren't takers?
Well, I think part of it is the unemployment, and the other part is you've got Charlottesville that's 25 minutes down the road. And you've got a lot of large employees, UVA, I'm sure, granddaughter who works at Field Hospital. So I think those are the big.
You've got a lot of competition for those workers.
No one wants to work.
Work ethic, I was gonna say.
We in our second generation now of people who do not want to do labor.
I say I must know the wrong people. That's what I must know. I just must,
It might be that our
I just must know the wrong people.
economic
Why don't I know?
planner, Stacy Gardner, should maintain information about job opportunities that exist and publicize them, not only in Madison County, but beyond Madison County.
Well, let's see if we can kind of, I think the great conversations, we'll see if we can finish. I'd like to do a little bit on the vision just before we leave. If we can just do 10 minutes. I'm crazy. So, again, just to kind of, we do have a low employment rate, it's, again, counting, who's counted that, I still would say we're at a point where, older population, smaller segment of work, of people who are in the labor market. Here, their business establishment, you can see, you have a private business establishment, less than 5, or that's 63%. You do have a fair amount of self-employed people as well. And again, I'll pass this along, this slides tomorrow, so we can go into the next one, just sort of kind of breeze through some of these.
Okay.
Now, I think this is one just to maybe get a little more time on. I think this is interesting. is it a quarter of the farms? And this came from, this is the ag census.
2017, so I want to make sure that's very clear. That's the most recent data we were able to obtain.
You know, you look, you can see that a farm of 100,000 more in sales a year is 9%. You know, you look at less than $2,500 a year is a quarter. So, you know, outside of a fairly small segment of your large cattle farms, different people, a lot of the farms, I don't know if I would use the term, and we've had an increase in farms. You can see the increase in number of farms. But I think it's consistent with what I see just driving around the county all the time. I think that a lot are, I don't like the word hobby farms, but it's ag land that's maybe not being, you know, in heavy production. Some of it is, but most of it is in sort of, I don't know if you used to call it gentleman farming or whatever, hobby farm. Most are kind of small.
With your low income or your low sales versus your increase, I mean, correlation doesn't always equal causation, of course, but
Right.
you had a 24% increase in farms, and you've got, you know, 23% or $2,500 or less in sales per farm. That's clearly not somebody's commercial interest there.
No way.
It's not their primary income. I mean, they're preserving the land.
Exactly.
They might be leasing out someone put some hay. That, you know, we're at 28 million. I mean,
That's exactly right.
I think, you know, when you get over to Shenandoah Valley, it sort of changes a little bit. The central Virginia, the Piedmont, I think you just see more, again, I was telling you the term hobby farms. I think there are some big ag operations, but, you know, I think about the poultry and Page and the raw sales, you know, it's easily, I want to even say we're around 100 million in Page. You go to Rockingham and Shenandoah, you're up into a couple $100 million in ags. This is just a community that, it's ag land, but it's not necessarily high production agriculture.
This would be nice to see with that increase in number of farms is the total acreage. Because I think that total
Absolutely.
acreage is
Correlation
dropping.
there.
Yeah, I mean, would everybody agree with what I just said about the farming in general? I mean, is that?
Well, I think the only thing you left out was land use. A lot of people, land use, you have to have so
Next
much.
slide.
Yeah.
You've got 2 cows on your 5 acres. Can I say a couple things? I'm gonna get going because I'm not required to be here. But, I just had a few things, and actually I had some questions from the old comp plan, goal 1, number 2. Slay continue to support the economic viability of agriculture, forestry. Are those, I mean, 28 million sales, 2017, sounds good. Is farming and positive economic? I mean, you're not gonna attract somebody here to start a farm. They're gonna go broke, right? So it's hold on to what you got. The acreage probably has dropped. But, so that's more of a statement. Land use tax, you know, Clay, I know that was your platform when you were running for the Board of Supervisors. There's a lot of abuse in that. Certainly diminishes, I know a lot of people that are tree farmers, they're retired, they got their land in forestry simply for the tax break, so people don't build beside them, which is great, the land's preserved, but widespread.
Everybody thinks there's tremendous abuse of land use. The more and more you kind of dive into it, forestry, I'd say more so just on holding the world together type of land. But it's not as bad as what it really is. There's a lot of production agriculture.
Madison has a fairly strict regimen
And
for
I
land
was
use.
gonna say, and land
I have to
use,
go through it every year.
it's like everything else, if it's there, it's because they can squeak by, and that, we should tighten that up, but not accuse the whole thing of being.
I don't want to steal
Absolutely.
Nathan's train, but we talk about farm size, we talk about farm sales, and whether it's a primary source of income or and I wouldn't say gentleman, I would say a hobby. I think that goes to a lot of the different things that we have and emphasize in the comp plan, and it is vitally important on preservation of the way of life that we have. Even smaller tracts of land are vital to
Absolutely, and that leads me to my third point, which is I would be happy if the population of Madison increased at the same rate it's been doing for the last 200 years. More people do not equal a tax base, they equal a tax burden. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, good comments on farm. I think you're right. Just because you're not out there,
Thank you guys,
making
continue
bucks.
the good work.
All right.
Selling chicken houses doesn't mean that it's still not, maybe smaller scale, still not viable. It still doesn't serve a, part of the community's fabric. So, yeah, I think
Lincoln,
that's.
before we
Mhm.
go on to putting things on the wall, there were two comments, one from Mike and one from Peter, that I think we ought to try to address. And that is, for whom is this comp plan intended? What's the audience? And that is a vital question. One of the things that occurred to us when we were doing the 2018 was that people, as I mentioned earlier, would tell, it was a much bigger volume of information. Lots of it came from Rappahannock, Rapidan. For example, last time Rappahannock, Rapidan gave us about 150 pages worth of stuff, which we cut down to be readable. You know, we wanted to develop a comp plan that people would read, they'd take it off their shelves. They would use it as a guide. In some of your presentations, you mentioned the comp plan a lot.
Well, I was gonna say, to your point, you asked who the audience was, and pardon the interruption. But the audience, at the end of the day, is you. It's the planning commission and the board. You know, it's a guidepost established by the community. The purpose being to guide the decision-making, to make sure that when individual issues arise, that we're making decisions that are in the best interest of our vision as a whole for the community.
Well,
It's really for everyone.
It is for
Everyone who lives here or who will come.
I would agree that's certainly part of it. But
And it's not an ordinance.
Mike mentioned that in his view, we ought to have a document that we can hand to somebody who's interested in moving here. Or
You can do
somebody
both.
who is interested in bringing a business.
You can do both.
Well, let's move on through this. That's a good question. So we go to land use, and I'm not exaggerating, but I just want to try to, so we can get this. I got to watch Madison and Lorraine play football. Playoffs, that's right. Now, this is this is in process. This is actually, I think, pretty accurate as far as looking at our land use. We estimated residential, commercial, and industrial. Now, this was a zoning, right?
Good question.
I think this is what we.
I pulled this one from the 2012 plan.
Because we added some things to it. We're gonna get a better, we're actually gonna do a zoning and a land use. But just give you an idea, even if it was zoning, I think it is zoning. You just look at what's zoned, residential, commercial, and industrials, a little over 5%. Ag, half the land. Forest, conservation, I think, is 40%. 5%, 22% parkland, and then just kind of break that down a little more. Shenandoah Park is 70%, and then you've got Hoover Ridge is 4%. I guess there's some other erroneous.
Areas that we're still trying to identify.
Right, we didn't know where that came from, so we got to identify those.
This may be a crazy question. Does this one have landmarks on it that this one didn't? Maybe I'm not seeing it.
They're essentially.
So we can actually see what's happening in what part of the county.
Is the TAM C1 and the light green A1?
Maybe I'm just blind.
Yeah, tan would be A would be on the right. The green's going to be agriculture. The tan's going to be conservation. The yellow would be residential.
Sorry, it's just hard to see upside down.
Whatever these maps are, we need to really change them. They're landmarking maps. I mean,
Yeah.
they're representative and they over, especially in this large scale territory.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because when somebody looks at a map like this, it is just a maze of colors and it's literally no sense. So what we can do is, say you wanted to focus on the town of Madison, for an example, and the areas surrounding it. This would be good for just a real high-level view, but if you wanted to focus on, okay, we want to do some development or land use changes or some policies around the town of Madison, then we can do a smaller map, just, we can call it like a small area plan as part of this process. I have seen maps that were so, can I say, convoluted, because there were so many colors, I couldn't make heads or tails of it. So if you're looking at these and you're saying, I don't really know what I'm looking at, that's okay, you're in good company. Because it took me a while just to sort through what I'm looking at.
Yeah, we'll present this in a, I'd say better way, but just, I think the big thing is to kind of look to the right. You can kind of see from the zoning perspective where we're at, and we'll sharpen this up, in the future. So hit one more.
Ligon, just
Yeah.
real quick.
Yeah.
Would it possibly make sense for some of the real planning documents just to leave the park out of it? Reduce the scale so that you've got just the things that
Yeah,
this group is
we
gonna act on.
Yeah, we've started kind of doing that. I can actually get on GIS and remove the park and then look at everything else. Well, and once I have a little more time, which I do
Yeah,
here,
oh, sure.
we'll definitely, for the vision statement, let's just end this way. I think when we get together, let's do one little exercise where we go, just because I got these things picked up. We'll go ahead and start thinking about vision. When we meet again, I'm thinking maybe we could do one in December, maybe January. I'll be on the email. We can really dive into the vision statement that this group comes up with, that maybe at some point we'll present. And then why don't we save those little topics for the next meeting? But let's just go around the end. And we'll start back here. And whatever comes to your head, if it's just a couple words, if it's maybe a sentence. And I'm driving around Madison County in 20 years from today. Might give you a couple things off the top of your head that you.
I can read you my mission statement.
I just want a couple things.
Okay.
But the two big
A
things that stand out.
realistic, readable plan. Realistic.
I'm talking about Madison and
Plan,
in 2040. You riding around here looking at Madison in 20 years.
Based upon our physical capacity, which means infrastructure and sewage. And number two would be our recent history. Not in my backyard plays a huge part in this plan. And y'all can shake your heads, but it does. You can read the paper. And this guy did 60 months of
6 months.
6 months, 20 conditions, and we said no. And I think this comp plan needs to stop that.
Okay.
If we are not gonna pass something, why in the hell do we go through this?
Well, give me two things about Madison in 20 years, based on your wanting us to maybe embrace
We
things.
want it small,
Okay,
and I mean, and we will probably have no sewage, so we're gonna be small. And we want it pretty, or beautiful.
All right.
All right, that's my two.
Okay, small community that's beautiful. All right. Don?
Oh, I'm just observing. Thank you.
Peter?
Mountains, scenic beauty, open fields with well-planned, well-located businesses. But mostly open space. Open space is important.
Well-planned residential and commercial growth?
Yeah, that'll do. Well located.
All right, that's good. My handwriting's terrible, but I'll type it up.
Maintain rural lifestyle.
ask a question. This is a challenge question. When you say rural lifestyle, how would you define that?
One more little layer to that cake, there we go.
I think it should be a sustainable tax base, so you can't go with zero.
So,
You gotta have something.
I mean, I think all three of these, we have a very common theme here going. Anything else
Come
for
back
that?
around to me, because I'm gonna choose my words carefully.
Okay.
But I'll put it together here in a minute.
All right.
Anthony,
20 years from now, I want it to still feel like Madison.
what's that?
I want it to still feel like Madison, feel like home.
Okay, as somebody who is a newcomer and not familiar with Madison on the same level you are, how would you explain that to me?
It's, the way you'd explain it is, it's one of the most beautiful places in the world, and the people who are native here never want to leave. And I want it to still feel that way 30 years from now. We're talking about a 5-year plan, but we need to be looking at 30 years down the road. Who has already done what we want Madison to be, and find out what that is and how that is, and follow their footsteps.
Okay.
Okay, that's good.
Community bond.
The bond here is strong.
Okay. Good.
Rivers run
Good.
deep in Madison. All right, Cardi.
Uh-oh. Well, let's see, as Waverly Yale's grandson, I guess I'm gonna have to say, I wanna see good schools.
You got one more?
No, that's enough.
All right. Hey,
Oh, I got plenty, but, you know. Go ahead.
No, no, what I
Keep it
did,
simple.
what I did, in my writings was to go back to the vision plan we had and try to figure out what would I go with today compared to what I had a problem with was definition of these terms we use. Because just like you said, rural environment, what's rural environment mean? What does scenic beauty mean? What it means to you might be different than what it means to me. What it means to my sister coming out of the city is quite a bit
right,
different.
right, but I think
So,
it,
you know, those kind of things, and I'm gonna be able to see the mountains.
Yeah.
They're not going anywhere.
well, I want two things from you right now.
I don't know. I don't know.
Tell you-
But you wanna see them, you don't want stuff put up in front.
Okay, so you,
Yeah.
Good view sheds.
A nice view shed.
View shed,
Yes.
okay.
But the
I
thing
mean,
is,
I see some commonality here.
Say that.
I wanna hear about some housing and things, where we're gonna live at, or,
Yeah.
okay.
No,
All
I
right,
can't do that.
Steve,
I'm supposed to use observing.
Steve, give me two, give me one. We'll come back to you after,
Well,
what we got?
the rural character, that
Okay.
again, it's tight-knit community.
All right, Peter,
Like Mike, I have written something out, but I'm not gonna read it.
give me a
I'm
couple
going
of
to, I'm going, without giving up any of my points, I'm going to adopt Peter's general points, but go on to say that to preserve and affect, and enhance these assets, we need to do certain things.
Yes.
And we need to list those, and I've listed 7, and so that's far beyond
All right.
my allotment.
Mr. Snyder,
I would like to keep the farmland, as it is right now, but also in some kind of a common way of getting, I've always wanted a Bojangles, and I keep saying that from everybody.
so maybe,
I would like to see some kind of a restaurant growth, some kind of a small business area that we
okay,
can,
let's make that a good planner term, enhance commercial development.
correct, which we're not gonna do because nobody wants it.
Some people do.
No, who?
You?
Well, I do, but I don't count.
Yes, you do.
You live here.
Franchise and
No.
bring it before the board.
And that all goes back to not my backyard stuff, so nobody wants it.
Okay, I will put up here, just little, I hear some little NIMBY things.
Oh, there's a lot of NIMBYs in here. and I
Okay,
don't know how-
I hear it. Okay.
I got another one.
Yes, sir.
I want to protect their scenic byways.
That's where you
I
see
mean,
the rural.
they've been named their scenic byways, and I'd like to see them stay that way.
Are you calling that 29?
I was gonna say,
No,
that's the reason why
they're not.
29
What,
is
what,
not.
what is the scenic byway?
231 and 230 has both been designated as scenic byways.
Okay.
Stop running your,
All right.
your trash trucks up and down 231. It'll make it pretty.
I like the word community. Could we have, enhanced livability, meaning focusing on affordable housing and
Gotta have water and sewer for that.
You do, well,
You just
especially,
do.
especially sewer, we have water.
Well, there are other ways around. Okay, affordable, that's a good one, I think, enhance livability, play. Family value.
What about agritourism, pipe, wineries? I know we've got a ton of them already.
That would be my commercial development, because nobody's gonna do anything different than that.
Anything
More
else?
breweries anyway.
Brewery, yeah.
Anybody else with shotgun, got a couple more things, anything else before we leave? Anything else? Okay, that's good. All right, we'll be in touch and we'll set up another meeting and we'll try to change this data, some things we talked about, we'll look at, Jennifer and I. Let's think about maybe December, maybe early January, we'll get back together.
Ligon, may I?
Yes, sir.
Make one
Uh-huh.
further,
Yeah, please.
observation. It would be very helpful to me if, and I suspect to some others, if you were to send these slides to us in advance.
Yeah.
So we don't have to, I can't really read any of that stuff.
Yeah, well, I'll send it all to you tomorrow, but yeah,
No, before the meetings, please.
right, I mean, tomorrow I'll send everybody, but,
That was my fault.
I thought about sending it beforehand, I said, well, what are we gonna talk about, everybody's read it and all that, but, yeah, tomorrow I can send it to everybody beforehand.
Well, that's okay, because then we can dive in.
Thank you all for coming. I sit on a ton of these committees and stuff. This is a great group. I'm not just blowing hot air, I don't get compliments really to anybody. But please come back, it's super important and we appreciate it a whole lot. So thank you.
Thank you, Clay.
Yeah.
Clay, my name is Anthony.
Anthony.
What was it supposed to be? What was the time that was supposed to be?
I said hour and a half. but that's
Okay, okay.
Long dead, baby.
I know. Like Mike Powell, when I see him, I still say, John Mike, hey, John Mike, I mean, Mike. You know, some things.
See you later.
Stop.
Thank you, guys. Hey, that's fine.
Well, never but forget your name.
See some areas that need a little clarity, but that's. Did you take a lot of notes?
Nobody?
Hey, I tell you what, you wanna work with buzzword?
What's that?
All right. Good to see you. Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah,
So,
thanks for getting back to me.
Get
yeah,
through there all
so
right?
Get there,
Tuesday, right? This coming Tuesday?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do that.
I still go.
Yeah,
Well, thanks for coming out tonight.
No, I'm really interested in this process.
Yeah, well, interesting group. Some counties tend to start this, or they just like Jennifer says, take it, blow the dust off. But we have seen some very complicated, contentious stuff come up, so it is